I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up.
What's up, everyone? I'm Will Carr. This is the Will Carr Speaks podcast. I have Dr. Scott with me today. We are going to get into health optimization, some supplements. We're going to talk about how various supplements can work with college athletes and how we can honestly just take better care of our health. So to get going, Dr. Scott, can you just fill me in about Troscriptions and kind of what your company does?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
So it's always an interesting place to where do you start with all this?
Yeah.
But Troscriptions was a company that we developed about 5 years ago. It was the brainchild of some colleagues and I, understanding that when people are on their journey to optimize their health, it can take a while.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to feel better tomorrow, but sometimes it doesn't actually happen tomorrow. If you've been having challenges for 30, 40, 50 years, and all of a sudden you want to feel better tomorrow, it's difficult for that to happen. So the idea with Troscriptions was to find ways you could help people right now using various products while they're on that longer path to optimizing health. So energy, focus, sleep, stress, immune system function. So that, I'm not a clinician, I'm an internal medicine doc, and I have a telemedicine practice. And the whole framework of Troscriptions came from another company entirely called Health Optimization Medicine and Practice,
Cool.
which is a nonprofit organization that's training practitioners on how to optimize health. And so we optimize health using laboratory data, diet, lifestyle, supplementation, but in a very different shift than what you typically see from like going to a regular doctor, going to even an integrative doctor. Most of the time they're going to try to find like root causes of illness and things like that. So we optimize health, but that takes time. And so Troscriptions started as a way to help people right now while they're on that longer path. And so in my clinical practice, I have an optimization program that I use with people, and that's based on that nonprofit's work. And then from there, we try to add things along the way to help them. And Troscriptions became that avenue for us to really start doing that very effectively, very quickly across the spectrum of health, people that were super sick and people that are pretty well optimized and just wanted to be better.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that's innovative about what you're doing is really the delivery method, right?
Sure.
It's how you're getting the supplements and the proper medication into people's bodies.
Sure.
So can you just kind of touch on what a troche is?
Yeah. So a troche or a troche, we call it a troche, which again, potato, but
okay.
A troche is this dissolvable lozenge that goes between your upper cheek and gum. And dissolves over about 15 to 30 minutes. And the nice thing about a troche is that they're small, they're scored. So it means you can cut them up into like a quarter, a half, or a full if you'd like, and you can find the right dose for you. The other thing about dissolving in the mouth, what's nice is that it bypasses digestion in the body so that you
straight into the bloodstream.
Straight into the bloodstream. As a result of that, you get more potent and more bioavailable ingredients. Meaning bioavailable, which means it's like they're stronger. Like when things go and you swallow them as a supplement, you lose a lot of the activity of them. Commonly, most supplements are at 20 or 30% bioavailable, so not a lot. But when they're dissolved in the mouth, it's much higher overall. And then what's also nice is it's going to be faster, right? So instead of having to go through your stomach, your small intestine, your liver, it goes directly into the bloodstream, as you mentioned, and then you're feeling something within 5 to 15 minutes typically. Yeah. And so it's nice to have that kind of rapid, immediate feedback, when you're actually having something, so that if you're taking something for anxiety, like within about 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to feel like that anxiety is coming down. If you're taking something for energy or focus, you'll take that and you'll feel in 5 to 10 minutes, wow, I feel so much better. Like my brain is actually turning back on. So you have this capacity to have like almost immediate feedback, which is nice. And so we also use very novel ingredients in our products as well as a way to help in very novel ways that most supplement companies don't think about.
So tell me, what are some of those ingredients?
Well, the one we kind of pioneered was the one called methylene blue.
Yeah.
And methylene blue has been around as a compound for over 150 years. 1870s is actually when it was actually developed. But we're the first company to come out with a commercial product of methylene blue, using methylene blue back in 2020. At that point, we were the only company. In 2024, we were like one of 6 or 7, maybe 10 companies at that point. And now it's about 60 companies that are making it. So we have a lot of experience. We understand how it should be really working in clinical practice and also in health optimization in general. And we were really the ones that pioneered the ideas of how to understand the research in a more novel and applicable way to many people out there. Yeah. And so methylene blue has gotten very popular in 2025, which is cool. With that comes challenges, of course, because then you have people sort of riding trends and just making companies. And then at the same time, you have a lot of benefit there, but you have to kind of piece out, well, where's the major benefits with dosing and who's the best person and things like that. And like the cool thing about methylene blue is that it can really apply to people that are pretty well optimized and people that are super sick at the same time. It just depends on the dose and the frequency. And then you can kind of dial it in, because I have endurance athletes that are using methylene blue all the time, because methylene blue can work just like oxygen in the cells and give you more energy. And so it helps you hit that wall later. And so you can maintain a heart rate elevation for longer because you have methylene blue around, for example. They also have endurance athletes that are using it when they travel all the time, because when you travel, you're on an airplane, you're at low altitude. Most people don't know this, but when you travel on an airplane, you're pressurized in the cabin to about 6,000 or 8,000 feet. 8,000 feet is more common. Now, we live in Colorado, not a big deal for us. Like going on an airplane, we typically get off an airplane to sea level and we feel glorious, right? Because we have, more oxygen capacity because we're at altitude. But most people live at sea level. And so then their oxygen level goes from about 21% oxygen, which is in the air at sea level. The rest is mostly nitrogen. And then when they come down when they come on an airplane, they're on about 17% oxygen. And that's a hypoxic stress, a low oxygen stress. And so they don't feel good when they're on an airplane. And they also feel worse when they get to wherever they are, because they were just low oxygen for however many hours they were just spending on a plane. And so methylene blue can compensate for that. So we have a lot of people that are using it on the endurance side, but also on travel protocols. So when you get to your destination, you don't feel like as crappy as you would otherwise, because you had methylene blue around to help you optimize the system and keep you from going low oxygen. Because when you go low oxygen, your body gets inflamed, your cells get more stressed. And it's one of the major reasons you have jet lag when you get to where you're going. So when I lived in California and I would travel all the time, I felt like, not that great when I got to my destinations. And then when I moved to Colorado, I was like, holy crap, I get off the plane, I feel amazing because there's methylene blue on board. But when anybody's coming to visit us here in Colorado, I always recommend getting on some methylene blue before they get on the plane and then taking it when they get here. And it does help with the altitude. And I was just actually in China, in Tibet, a couple months ago, and we were at 12,000 feet or elevation or higher. We went up to Everest Base Camp.
Cool.
Fun fact, there's actually 4 or 5 base camps. I didn't know this ahead of time. But the one on the Chinese side that we went to, you can take a bus to, elevation 17,800 feet.
Wow.
And we had a bunch of stuff on board, Viagra on board, helps with blood flow. Many people probably don't know that. But it does, not only from like the nether regions, but also the brain. But also had diamox as a drug that helps, but methylene blue was a tried and like a daily thing that we were doing at that altitude. And my O2 sat was much better than everybody else's, actually, because we lived at altitude here in Colorado. Like I was, even at 17,800 feet, I was teetering around like 87 to 92% most of the time. Whereas some of the guys I was with, they were at like 75, 80%. So we had to have them on continuous oxygen. We didn't do the whole altitude acclimatization thing, which we just did it over a week. But methylene blue is a great way that we found to really help a lot in that capacity. So helps on that performance side, and also helps if you're super sick and you need a lot of mitochondrial support. Methylene blue could really help on that side too.
Yeah, because I've personally been a methylene blue user for the last almost 2 years.
Have you? Okay.
I take it almost every morning. I take it in a tincture form. So I'm curious, even how much, from a delivery standpoint, I take it as a tincture. Am I getting that same type of benefit that you'd be getting from a troche? Being that it's going straight to my bloodstream? Is that
so? The thing about methylene blue that's interesting is that it's almost 100% bioavailable. So you don't have to dissolve it in your mouth. You can actually swallow it. But the troches are nice because they're homogenized together and made in a certain way. You know exactly how much you're getting every single time. The problem with liquids, Will, unfortunately, is that you don't know exactly how much you're getting. You probably are going to tell me you take a certain amount of drops every morning, right? Do you have any idea how many milligrams that is?
No.
Nobody ever does. And it drives me fucking crazy. It's like, well, how much are you actually taking? They're like, I don't know. I'm taking 10 drops. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Guilty.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always have this conversation with people. I'm like, yeah, you're taking 10 drops and you feel great. You're taking 10 drops and you feel like shit. Like, I don't know how much you're taking. It doesn't matter to me. Because even if you go the next step and say, okay, even if you did know, tell me like if there's like a milligram per dropper or something that you're taking, the odds that it's actually a milligram, not very good. Usually the potency on most of the liquids is like about 50 to 60%. Meaning that it says that you're taking 1 milligram, you're probably taking 0.6 or 0.5 milligrams. So people that go from a liquid to our stuff typically have a significantly different experience using our stuff at the same amount of milligram dosage, because it's actually the amount of milligrams that it says on the label. And so, not to say that liquids can't be beneficial,
it's just harder to dose.
But you don't know the dose. And also they do tend to have more contamination with heavy metals. Because when methylene blue is made, it's made in a lab. It's not made from the
Right.
ground. And so as a result of that, sometimes during the laboratory production process, you get lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic in there. Now, you don't want those, right? Like
Right.
those are not very therapeutically beneficial. But liquids tend to have more of those than what we have, but not always. Some of them are pretty clean as well.
Yeah.
But you have to just make sure you trust your manufacturer and know what you're getting. And that's the major thing that we found over the years is just that liquids are the most notoriously difficult to understand the quality.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful. There's a lot of companies out there. They'll say, "Oh, this methylene blue is made in the United States." No methylene blue is made in the United States if it's being available to you without a prescription. So if you go on Amazon, you buy your methylene blue. Funny story, like a couple of weeks ago, a guy's like, "Yeah, I bought this methylene blue that said it was US made, but it took 3 weeks to get through customs." There you go.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of what we're up against as a company because we've been around the longest.
Yeah.
I'm happy that there's been more interest, but again, finding the right quality, finding the right dosing, it's not easy. And then understanding that most people don't need a lot of methylene blue. It could be like 4, 8, 25 milligrams at most.
Yeah.
Most people maybe that are not 6'11" need like less than other people, right?
Right.
But most people need around that kind of dosing to see the benefit. Whereas a lot of the companies out there are recommending you take like 40, 50, 80, 100 milligrams of methylene blue, which is way too much for most people.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause more stress on the system than is most likely needed. Now, like one dose of 100 milligrams for people that are relatively well optimized are probably going to make them feel pretty damn good. But if they start taking that every day, it's not going to work like that over time.
Yeah.
Because the higher doses cause more stress on the system. They're actually, the higher doses are anti-infective, which is great, which they can be used as an anti-infective. And if you lived in countries up until like Eastern European countries until the 1960s and 70s, if you had a sore throat as a child, you got methylene blue lollipop, and it painted your back of your throat with methylene blue.
Because it's antimicrobial, it's antiviral.
Yep.
It's
at the higher doses.
So many benefits that aren't even just the oxygenation of the cells at the mitochondrial level. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that's so cool about methylene blue as a supplement.
Yeah.
Often we take supplements, right? Like, and we're told this is good for us, or like we need it. It's going to help our health. Mm-hmm. But when you take methylene blue, is one of the only supplements I've ever taken where I noticed it. You know that you feel better. I'll take it before I go on a big crazy hike. And it's like, I'll climb that mountain and it feels like I could just climb that mountain again. Or I'll take it before I go and play basketball and I'm running down the court and I'm not feeling tired, even though I'm winning every game and I'm not coming off the court. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one of the most interesting things about it. I've also heard, and so I'll be interested what you think of this.
Sure.
I like to take it before I go and get in my infrared sauna.
Okay.
Because I've heard that the infrared can actually activate it in our bodies more. Is there any truth to that, or am I just getting a placebo effect?
So it's a slight change in that. So methylene blue and red light synergize together. So red light is about 680 nanometers.
Okay.
Red light actually goes and works in the mitochondria in a very similar way that methylene blue can. So it can be synergistic together. So if you do some methylene blue, take some methylene blue, and then 45 minutes to an hour later, depending on your delivery, go out in the sunlight, or go in front of your red light panels, you're going to have significant synergy for that.
Okay.
However, with infrared, it's not directly synergistic. The way you can think about this is that when you're going through like a detoxification kind of thing, where you're sweating a lot, your body's sort of exfoliating in some ways.
Yeah.
That's stressful for the system, and the body's trying to detoxify. And what I found is you can use methylene blue before somebody goes into an infrared sauna as a way to help them feel less like shit when they get out of a sauna, especially if they have a lot of detox to do.
Yeah.
And so if you have people that say that, wow, I use methylene blue, I go into my infrared sauna and I feel like I feel energized, right?
Yeah, feel awesome when I get out.
And that's typically because your body has enough detox capacity now that you have methylene blue on board, because it works it doesn't work only just making energy. It also helps with detoxification too.
Interesting.
And so people oftentimes when they're going under more detox feel fatigued. They feel tired and kind of just irritable and just not themselves. But having methylene blue on board will help with the detoxification side of things. So you can feel the benefit of the infrared sauna without having the downside of feeling like you're kind of tired and groggy afterwards. So that's what you're feeling.
Okay.
It's not directly synergistic.
Okay.
It's more indirectly synergistic because it's helping with the detoxification while you're also mobilizing a lot of detoxification garbage. And that's what infrared saunas are great for.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the capacity to neutralize that stress or that sort of garbage, you might not feel very good afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's why you have people that'll go into a sauna and then feel like crap, right?
Right.
Or they feel very tired and groggy. But if you have methylene blue on board, you don't typically feel that way. So indirectly, you are benefiting your detoxification pathways because methylene blue can work directly as an antioxidant.
Yeah.
What do we need is if we have a lot of stress in the body, we need more antioxidants to neutralize that. And methylene blue can do that. At low doses even, it can do that.
Yeah.
And then at the higher doses, it becomes more of that anti-infective.
Okay.
And so it's got this spectrum of dosing that's important. After about 1 milligram per kilogram for most people, that's when you start seeing more of the anti-infective. So that's about, not for you, about 50 to 70 milligrams that typically dose. Your dose would be higher.
Yeah.
But for most people, that's the average dosing that you'd find more of an anti-infective. When it comes to mitochondrial support, it's not necessarily per kilogram kind of dosing, because some people will feel great at 4 milligrams, some people feel at 25. Body weight doesn't really seem to matter as much for this one, but when it comes to anti-infective, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's interesting because it just seems like it's such a miracle supplement. And the one, like the one negative that I hear about it that I see on social media as I'm scrolling, there'll be people, there's like these really, I'll call them purist people, because like you said, it is synthetically made in the lab. It's not like a natural compound.
Right.
Kind of what's your response to that when people say, you know, oh, it didn't come from a plant, it's made in a lab. So I'm this purist hippie who doesn't want to use it. Yeah.
I was talking to a lady just yesterday, actually. She's like, I'm a granola person. I'm like, you need to take your granola with your methylene blue and just shove it in your mouth. And it's going to be okay. And I'll tell you why, right? So it's because not everything that's synthetic is good for us, for sure.
Right.
But not everything synthetic is bad for us. Just like not everything natural is good for us.
Right.
And not everything, obviously not everything natural is bad for us. And the way I would describe it is this: like, we live in a synthetic world. We live under bad light, challenging food, air, relationships, stress. These are all things that are not very ancestral in many ways, right? So if you were living in an ancestral way with perfect lighting, perfect food, perfect water, perfect air, you probably wouldn't need methylene blue. But most people don't live that way. The majority of people, right? Even if you're living an ancestral life and you're putting tallow on your face, like that's cool. I'm not against tallow on your face, Daniel. Hello, but
shout out to our buddy Daniel with his bison tallow face cream.
And I'm all for that, right? But most people are not living an ancestral life, and so sometimes we need synthetic things to help us. Just like not everything natural is good for us. If you eat the wrong mushrooms, you will die of liver failure. I've seen it happen in ICUs when I was in training. Okay. Another good example is my father's a chiropractor for 45 years. He was militantly against the medical establishment for a long time. But then eventually he realized, like, sometimes you need antibiotics.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to go to the hospital.
Yep.
Or you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes there is a need for things that are not ancestral so that we survive, right? These meat suits that we wear weren't supposed to be around for more than 40, 45 years because of infection, because of trauma, because of other reasons. But we weren't supposed to live that long. And so to maintain these the meat suits, these avatars that we wear around, we don't get a new one. We're not like the movie Avatar, right? Or like this other show not yet at least, or this other show on Netflix that I like called Altered Carbon. It's a great show. Cool. It's a really cool sci-fi idea. You can just get a new body, right? After a certain amount of time. Like, we just don't have that capacity yet, right? And so we live in a synthetic world. We need synthetic things to help us sometimes. And then methylene blue just falls into this category where it's just this amazingly supportive compound that has so many potential applications. And again, should we be using it every day for the rest of our life? The answer is probably not. Like, we should probably try to optimize our mitochondria and our diet and lifestyle, get out of shitty relationships and do all the things that would make us better humans cellularly, as well as macroscopically as well. But that's not always easy for people, right? It's not always easy for people to change everything about. They can't change their job as easily every day. They can't change their relationship very quickly oftentimes. So, you need the support. And then look, we're also trying to optimize performance too, right? So we got to think about what are those edges that we can sort of run on. And I have a couple guys that they swallow their methylene blue so that nobody else knows that they're taking it. From an endurance, I have a cyclist specifically. He's like, I don't want anybody else to know that I'm using this, right? Because he's seeing his times go up, his VO2 max increase, and he doesn't want his competitors to know what he's doing. I'm like, well, I'm going to spread the word, man. I'm not going to tell him it's you, but I'm going to tell him because these are things that I see, and I'm like, well, why not, right?
Yeah. So is it some of the same benefits to like getting in a hyperbaric chamber? Is that?
Well, the answer is yes. And I guess in the sense that a hyperbaric chamber, what that does is drives more oxygen in circulation. Okay. That allows you to make more energy, right? But the thing about methylene blue that's very interesting is it not only helps you on the energy side, but it helps on the detoxification side too. What hyperbaric therapy is going to do is going to shove a whole lot more energy in the system. And the question is, can the system tolerate that energy or not? If you're well optimized, probably, yeah. And you're going to feel a burst and you're going to feel that energetic boost. But if you're not that well optimized, you're also going to get, so we're not electric cars, we're gasoline powered cars. Okay. Our mitochondria, the parts of our cell that make energy, we make energy, the ATP, the currency that we make about 150 pounds of that every single day. Maybe you more than the average human. Again, I got to make a lot of tall jokes.
It's
again.
Good, man. I love it.
But
keep them coming.
But we make 150 pounds of it every single day. But we don't just make ATP. We also make water, carbon dioxide every time we make ATP. And we also make what are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. And so that is ROS, those free radicals that people have heard of, they are okay in low amounts. But if we have too many of those, then the body has to be able to neutralize that with antioxidants. And if you're antioxidant deficient, and I put you in a hyperbaric chamber and you go deeper pressures, you're not going to feel very good because your body doesn't have that capacity to neutralize that oxidative load. The way hyperbaric therapy works actually over the long term is creating that load of extra oxygen that causes these free radicals, that causes shifts in how your DNA expresses genes. So new blood vessels, stem cells get released to make new types of tissue, neurons, heart, bone, doesn't matter, can do all those kinds of things. It's also an anti-infective via the oxidative stress. It improves immune system via oxidative stress. So it works in those capacities, but if your system doesn't have the capacity to neutralize that load of oxygen, you may not get the benefit long-term that you're looking for. So I'm a big fan of using hyperbaric therapy acutely for acute stress, like acute trauma, infection, inflammation, injury, because it's going to help the system heal faster. What I will do in correspondence to that is what I call educationally throwing shit at the wall, which means giving you a whole bunch of other things at the same time to help support your system so you can heal faster. But if you have more of a chronic issue and you're looking to optimize, or like you have a long-term goal like endurance, performance, it may not be the best thing to go into the chamber right away. Okay. It might be better like get your system, get your foundational biology in order, optimize that as best you can for 2 or 3 months, and then get into a hyperbaric chamber. That's when you see the biggest benefit. Yeah. So using a little bit of methylene blue could be helpful here, but I do a whole spectrum of laboratory testing with my patients to look at optimized levels of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, gut health, antioxidants, neurotransmitters, hormones, all the things that I feel like are foundational so that once somebody goes into a chamber, they're well supported as best as they can. Not everybody can do that whole kind of thing. And then if they can't, then we just kind of do an educationally trying not to throw shit at the wall, more like educationally trying to understand what's best for them. So a little bit of methylene blue before hyperbaric therapy can be helpful, like activated B vitamins, minerals, things like that are going to help support energy production, dilation of blood vessels so that you get more actually the oxygen to the tissue that you want. So you can use nitric oxide boosters and other kinds of things like that. So there's all these kinds of, the way I think about it with hyperbaric therapy is like, what are you doing before, during, and after to truly optimize the experience? Before optimizing the system so you can actually harness all that energy you're bringing in there, and then after, how you detoxing. So this is where infrared sauna can often come into.
Well, I think, one thing that's important to state and to recognize is that supplements are meant to be supplemental. You talk about how it can help, but you need to be able to get your core. I
just want your protein bars.
Core health.
Yeah, that's it. No, I just want your protein bars, nothing else.
Yeah, man. That's all I need. That's all you need. Get that good bison tallow and collagen, peptides, and protein in there for you.
That's it. That's all you need. No, exactly. Right. That's what they're supposed to be. Yeah.
But so another thing that I've heard about methylene blue is there was like a viral clip of Bobby Kennedy Jr. That went where he was getting on a plane and using it specifically for the purpose of anti-EMF. So is that something else that you see with because it seems like, I think we've already in this conversation talked about, a dozen benefits to methylene blue. So is that another layer? Is there something to that?
Well, think about what EMF is supposed to be doing, right? Supposedly doing. Not everybody believes this, but I think most of us think that non-native EMF is causing stress on our mitochondria, it's going to stress on our bodies, right? Stress on our bodies, and sort of the common denominator where we're seeing most stress is the mitochondria, which is the part of our cell that makes energy, and that's where we think EMF has its oxidative stress, inflammation focus, right? And so what is methylene blue doing here, right? It's helping with oxidative stress, inflammation, energy production in the setting of potentially non-native EMF as well. So you're thinking about this in a good way. I think what I think when somebody's on an airplane, I'm thinking, well, they're low oxygen, their air is shit, they're radiation exposed, and they're also getting non-native EMF as well. So then that methylene blue is compensating and potentially neutralizing or at least mitigating a lot of the damage of being on an airplane and then EMF exposure as well. So there's a different spectrum of tolerance, I think, to EMF for a lot of people. But it's sort of, if you're sensitive to EMF, it's usually because you're significantly inflamed in other ways and having many more issues on the mitochondrial side to work on. I mean, the statistics are pretty crazy, right? I think 94% of US adults have some element of mitochondrial dysfunction. So it's like a big, only 6% are metabolically healthy.
Yeah.
What that means, people hear like metabolism all the time, hear this word metabolic health all the time too. And for me, the way I describe metabolic health is that, relatively simply, is it, can you make energy effectively in the mitochondria? And can you detox or neutralize the stress that happens from making energy as well? If you can't do one of those two things, which is 94% of the US adults very effectively. Of course, there's a spectrum here. Some people have really shitty mitochondria. Some people just have mildly dysfunctional. Then you're not metabolically healthy is what it comes down to. And so what methylene blue can do is come in and help in the energy production side, and also going to help on the detoxification side too, which makes it very unusual. Most things coming in are either helping on the energy side, like hyperbaric therapy in this case, or caffeine or even nicotine. These are all things that help on the energy side, but they don't really help on the detoxification side very much. And so you got to take a step back and go, okay, why do people have mitochondrial dysfunction, right? And so for me, and looking at this in the data, it looks like the number one cause is insulin resistance, which is when people have too much blood sugar, too high blood sugars all the time. That blood sugar causes the stress on the cells because the cells are like, oh, we have all this sugar. We need to try to make energy from that. And then over time, you can't continue to produce as effectively. You make reactive oxygen species, and over time, the system starts shutting down. The second biggest reason is actually a big category that I call the sympathetic spiral of doom. Which is basically people in fight or flight all the time. And if you're in sympathetic fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system, that's like your fight or flight nervous system, can't calm down, can't relax, can't de-stress. What happens is that you sort of are always stressing the system in a way that stresses your mitochondria as well, with stress hormones, with stress chemicals, things like cortisol, for example. And then you're always in that state. Your mitochondria are like, what the hell? This sucks. And they start not performing as well. And then they release signals to try to get the sympathetic nervous system even more active. And then it becomes a sort of loop that's very difficult to break. And so that's a big one. And then infections in the environment, infections or toxins in the environment, medications, these are all ways that mitochondria are getting screwed up. And many people don't realize this, like common medications like metformin for diabetes, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole and Prilosec and things like that, which people can buy over the counter. And then even birth control pills and others, like it's like a lot of other medications that are affecting mitochondrial function. So we have to, for me in my clinical practice, it's like, okay, I can use methylene blue to help you, but then why are your mitochondria so screwed up? Or why are you always in sympathetic overload? And what can we do about that? Because over the long term, you want to actually help people, recalibrate in a way that's sustainable. They don't require things like methylene blue to help them. But in the short term, it's often really helpful to get them to say, okay, now we can understand what's going on here and try to start recalibrating the system, more long term, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. Well, a lot of who I speak to is college athletes through my work and the various college athletic departments that my brand Genesee Nutrition partners with. And one thing I would say is I wish I knew so much more about biohacking and health optimization when I was a college athlete.
Sure.
Now, obviously I knew nothing about it then. If I knew even a little bit of what I understand now, and I'm definitely no expert, that's why I'm here talking to someone like you. But things like methylene blue are such a no-brainer for college athletes because they can use it. It's simple. And it's going to have an immediate impact on allowing them to be better athletes. Other than methylene blue, you have other supplements that you deliver through the troches. What would you say is maybe one or two of your favorite, or maybe favorite's not the right word, but what supplements as a college athlete could these young adults use to really enhance their performance and make them better athletes in a natural, low risk way?
Right. Yeah. So I think first thing about methylene blue, though, just to stay there, is that it's not anything you have to worry about from a legality perspective.
Yeah.
It's WADA approved. Everything's cool. You just got to make sure you're getting it from a good source.
Yeah.
You shouldn't buy it from your friend's garage. You should, don't buy it on Amazon, please. Find a company that's trusted, that has a good certification. You could check our company out, Troscriptions. And we have a lot of different ideas here because the dosing really matters. And we actually, the first product we actually came out with in 2020 is called Blue Canatine. And it's a combination of methylene blue with nicotine, caffeine, and CBD.
Oh, cool.
So it's like your stimulant without the come down and crash.
Awesome.
It's like those pharmaceuticals that you might be getting from your friend that gets a prescription and you're not supposed to be taking it, without the come down, without the crash, giving you about 3 to 5 hours of focus, flow, productivity, and just getting shit done. And so from an athletic perspective, I have a friend of mine that does a lot of pickleball, for example.
Yeah.
She uses it for like pickleball tournaments, and it's fantastic.
Oh,
and I have a lot of college athletes that are using it as a pre-workout stack or a
Yeah.
pre-performance stack because it gives them that drive. And then people get a little bit worried about nicotine, but low doses of nicotine when you don't smoke it, when you don't vape it, very safe. You're not going to get addicted to it. And our troches are a slow release in the mouth. So it's not like you're smoking something. You never want to vape or smoke nicotine because it's often combined with other additives, which make it more addictive. But nicotine itself is a great nootropic. It's a great brain enhancer. You're going to be locked in, And so I have a lot of people, a lot of athletes that I work with that use it pre-workout, and it's like night and day. It's like when you find the right dose of methylene blue, it feels good. You don't feel like you're stimulated. You feel like you're just elevated and like you can just go for longer.
Yeah.
And you have sustainable, clean energy. But Blue Canatine, it's like snapping your fingers when you find the right dose. It's like, oh, whoa, I'm in. And you like snap your fingers like, is it a half a troche? Is it a whole? Is it a whole for some people?
Yeah.
Once you find it, it's like night and day.
I'm going to be honest. I haven't been this excited about a supplement in a long time. That stack that you just mentioned is like my 4 favorite things.
Yeah.
And I love taking my CBD at the end of the day just to relax, get my nervous system down. I start my day every day with coffee. I love my coffee and get my caffeine.
Sure.
Obviously, I love my methylene blue. And it's interesting you brought up nicotine because nicotine was one thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
It's such a there's so many misconceptions around nicotine because you think of it as, oh, you're a smoker. Like I use nicotine gum all the time. If I hadn't already had as much caffeine this morning as I've had, I probably would have a piece of nicotine gum in right now.
Sure. Yeah.
But anytime I need to lock in and do anything, if I've got a long work day or if I want to lock in to have a conversation or I'm trying to read several pages to study or learn anything, I'll throw in a piece of nicotine gum, man. It's like, talk about being able to dial in and be focused.
Yeah.
And never once have I felt any type of addiction towards it. Like
if you get to above about 4 or 5 milligrams a day, then when it starts potentially getting addicting, even with nicotine on its own.
Okay.
So you want to keep the dose about 4 to 5 milligrams or less per day. Like typically in most nicotine replacements, it's either 2 or 4 milligrams in a gum. Yeah. But you'll find that most people will respond at like a half or 1 milligram. And the synergy that we use with the methylene blue and caffeine, along with the CBD, with the nicotine together, it's like very low doses of all of those things. Only 50 milligrams of caffeine, which is a quarter cup of coffee, 5 milligrams of methylene blue, which is low. And then you have nicotine 1 milligram, CBD 5 milligrams. So it's super low dose, but it's super supportive. And so you feel like you snap your fingers and like, holy shit, this feels amazing. But you don't also feel like you're getting that crash at the end, which can happen if you get like a lot of caffeine or even a lot of nicotine, right? Yeah, you get this sort of crash at the end, but you don't get that. And nicotine is very supportive. And not only is it helping with neurotransmitters in the brain, like serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and acetylcholine, but it's also calming down your body via the vagus nerve, which is this long winding nerve that comes from your brain, goes to all of your organs, and it's your parasympathetic nervous system, your relaxing nervous system. So this is why people that actually use nicotine, they feel stimulated, but they feel calm at the same time. It's one of the very few compounds that allows that because it gives you the stimulation of those neurotransmitters, but it also gives you the calm of that vagal nerve that's being increased in tone. And so, and also decreases inflammation in the brain. We're using it in a lot of really cool ways. And so Blue Canatine as a pre-workout stack is amazing. And people use it all the time for that. They use it for like studying, they use it for workouts, anything where you need to kind of lock in for 3 to 5 hours, which is great. So that's what I would say is like our other product that's really great for pre-workout. But the other thing and I know you're into the CBD world as well, one thing that athletes don't really realize is that you don't make your gains when you're working out.
Through the recovery.
You make your gains when you're recovering, right? Yep. And so we have a whole suite of products that are focused on enhancing what's called the GABA system. Okay. GABA is the neurotransmitter in our brain
that calms. GABA as a supplement.
Okay, so interestingly, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So GABA is our primary inhibitory neurotransmitter in our brain. So it's like the brakes of our brain. Once we get the brakes going, the system can start going into what's called that parasympathetic nervous system, which is our relaxation, recover, digest, and detox. And it also build muscle, nervous system. You only build muscle and strength and recover when you get into parasympathetic mode. So if you're not getting good sleep, if you're always stressed all the time, you're not getting good recovery, hands down. So if you're an athlete, you need to recover well because you need to be able to be ready for that next workout. You need to be ready for that next game. And if you're not leveraging your recovery, you're not going to see the benefits that you would be seeing. And then the biggest thing oftentimes is that people are not minding their GABA system, right? But the problem is that GABA supplements, GABA is too big of a molecule to get into the brain. If it works for you, it could mean that your blood-brain barrier is allowing things in that they're not supposed to get in there. We call that a leaking brain. And that often means you have a leaky gut inflammation and things like that. Now, if you're taking a huge amount of GABA, like over 2 or 3 grams of it, you might be getting some in the brain, but GABA itself is too big to get across. Now, you know a lot about CBD, right? CBD, CBG, all the non-psychoactive cannabinoids, they bind to a site on the GABA receptor that enhances GABA to bind. They also bind to the endocannabinoid system. They bind to the serotonin system. But they have a significant effect on the GABA system as well. There's other things that can do this too, like kava, for example. Kava is well known as sort of like an alcohol alternative, right? Kava binds to a separate site on that receptor, increasing the amount of GABA to bind. So that's why it gives you that same kind of feel. Like you want to avoid alcohol, you want to avoid sleep drugs and benzos because these bind really tightly to that GABA receptor and they deplete GABA very quickly. And as a result, they give you more GABA deficiency and more difficult time over the long term at regulating your nervous system. People with GABA deficiency, they have more anxiety, they have more stress, they have more insomnia, more depression. They can't, they just really can't regulate their nervous system very well. And so you can use kava, CBD, CBG, CBN if you're looking at sleep. You can also use something called hanukkale, which is from a magnolia bark, which is a great anxiolytic. Valerian is another one that does it. But the coolest one we use it, and so we have something called Trocom at Troscriptions, and Trocom has kava, CBD, CBG, something called nicotinol or vitamin B3 attached to a GABA. The B3 attached allows B3 to get into the brain, and then B3 is mildly activating, and then obviously GABA is more relaxing. So you get this sort of relaxed but focused calm, which is super cool. So you don't feel like you're like, want to wind down and like just be sedated on the couch. Like you feel like you can actually like perform better because your nervous system is calming down, but you don't feel sedated at the same time. It quiets your mind, which is super nice. And then we have something called Troches, which has a combination of hanukkale, which is from magnolia bark, along with this other cool GABA compound called agarin. Agarin's from a psychedelic mushroom called the Amanita mushroom. You know the Amanita?
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, the fly agaric is also the name for it.
Yeah, the
Amanita,
the Mario mushroom.
Mario Brothers, Alice in Wonderland, Christmas. We don't believe in Christmas, but but Christmas.
I'm happy to go down that rabbit hole.
That's okay.
We'll save that one.
That's okay. But Christmas mythology is based on this mushroom. Actually. The idea of like this mushroom in Siberia, and like people can watch the stories. There's a good New York Times article on it. That's a video article. But you can notice that
there's been some good TikToks made on it.
I'm sure. But Amanita itself it's psychedelic at high doses and neurotoxic because it has an ingredient in there called ibotenic acid. But the other ingredient in there is called agarin, or muscle mol is the other name for it. And it is a long-acting agonist of the GABA receptor. So it binds to where GABA would binds and hangs out. So you have it's a half-life of about 6.5, 7 hours. So we synthesize this particular compound. And then we combine it with hanukkale from magnolia bark. Then we add CBD, CBN, 5-HTP, melatonin, and then some things that are working on the adenosine system in the brain. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter, also has other functions that makes you feel sleepy. So caffeine blocks the adenosine system. So that's why it makes you feel more wakeful. But when the caffeine goes away, adenosine floods the brain, and that's why you feel this crash afterwards, for example. But adenosine is great as a way. So it's basically a 5 neurotransmitter complete sleep solution, which is called Troches. And then we have the Trocom as well. So I think for athletes, it's like if you're traveling a lot as an athlete, especially over time zones, something like Troches is great because it really can help with that circadian rhythm recalibration. But the Trocom is probably the main one because Trocom will downregulate your nervous system. So you do your hard workout, you take your Trocom, and then you start immediately getting into getting that sympathetic nervous system to come offline. And then you're immediately going to be able to start healing and recovering and seeing that you're going to be able to actually have better recovery scores the next day.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm learning so much having this conversation with you. There is it's just fascinating how these compounds can be used to enhance ourselves as athletes, and especially athletes that are performing at a high level, or just your weekend warrior.
Sure.
But anyone that's wanting to optimize their health can use these things. I'm interested. I know that you're a dad of 4.
Yeah.
I'm also a father. I have a 9-year-old daughter. How do you think around being a father of 4? How do you think around, and with your vast knowledge of health optimization,
Sure.
how do you think around these concepts? Because so much of what we talk about is as we're adults. How can we use these type of concepts? Is it safe to give methylene blue to my daughter at times at 9? How can we use this knowledge that we have in order to health optimize our children? And really, because it's my belief that if we can get ahead of the curve with these types of concepts and understanding our health and how our body works, longevity, biohacking, if we can get our children on these paths early versus being someone who started discovering this stuff, in their upper 20s or something, if we can get them on these paths early on, how much better of a life, how much longer of a life, how much higher quality of living can they have? And so I'm interested what your thoughts are around that in general.
It's a great question. And it's something I think about a lot, because I also know there's so many things you can do, but you have to keep it really basic and foundational for kids as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
I'm not having my kids walk around with blue mouths like me most of the time. We do have one supplement called Tromune, which is high strength cordyceps from the cordyceps mushroom.
Okay.
And it's a green color, it's apple flavored. It's fantastic if you feel like you're getting sick.
Okay.
You can take it, you probably won't get sick. Or if you're using it more prophylactically, when a lot of people around you are getting sick, like I've seen amazing things about it. So my kids call it the green stuff in my house. And there's a little bowl of the green troches that they can take.
Nice.
Like, hey, Dad, I don't feel like it. I'm like, okay, how much do you need? Do you take a quarter, half, or full, depending on how you're feeling? Yeah. And so it's good to have these kinds of things.
Right.
But in general, it's like, okay, what's the foundational things that you're doing with your kids almost every single day?
Yeah.
And, good news, bad news is that most of what we teach our children is done by the age of about 8 or 9 years of age, right? After that, it's like, well, whatever you've done between those first 9 years, that's the big stuff. I mean, of course, it's important to be, my kids are 8 to 14 at this point. And so, but I see the shift, like at some point, like when their full ego construct is there, which is like, my son is Finn, like I'm Finn, I'm 8. These are my parents. These are my dog. These are my sisters. This is my dog, right? Like that's when things are much harder to shift, right?
Yeah.
But you can still do it. But I think the biggest window we have is between 0 and 8 or so to really mold our kids, and it's pretty well documented in the literature too, actually. And so my goal with them throughout that time frame is just giving them basic ideas of what's important.
Yeah.
Sleeping well, eating well most of the time. It's not to be militant about it, although my kids might disagree about that particular statement.
No food coloring.
And having, right, of course. And then having understanding relationships and understanding mindset and understanding the importance of sunlight and exercise and these kinds of basic things. Because once they can get understanding of the basic things, then it becomes, you can have like more, quote unquote fun. But I think that what gets lost in the adult world can get lost in the kids world too, which is, if you just start chasing the new supplement, the new technology, the new practice, you forget foundational things. Yeah. And I gave a lecture, I remember in 2019, I was at a biohacking conference and I was like, how many people, raise your hand if you're taking a supplement in the audience, like 99%.
Right.
But then I asked the next question, which is how many people are taking supplements that they need that are the reason they're taking them is because they're taking them because of a laboratory value that they've checked that says, okay, now I need this, right? Mm-hmm. So they've dialed it in because of laboratory testing. Maybe 20 or 30% of people raise their hand, right?
That's even higher than I would have guessed. But you're at a biohacking
That was a biohacking conference, right? And so this has changed now because there's more direct-to-consumer labs and people are taking more control of their health in various ways. Like, oh, I have a B vitamin deficiency, I'm taking B vitamins. But back in 2019, it was like very little people were doing that, right? So if you're not doing some of that work, at least getting baselines on occasion and understanding, okay, what are my base level of supplements that I should be taking? Like for me, I know what my base level of supplements should be. And then from there, I can play around. I can try something new. I can do something extra, like try this or try that or whatever, right? And I do that stuff all the time. But I have a basic stack of what I know is required based on my laboratory values and my biology. And then from there, then I can go play around. It's the same thing, with your diet and lifestyle. It's like, even if you're doing laboratory stuff, but you're eating McDonald's every night and then, drinking your IPAs every evening, and you tell me you feel like shit, I don't care what your labs say. Like, I'm not going to be able to do anything until you start doing some of that as well. So it's like, with kids, it's a very similar kind of idea, right? But it's more focused on foundational things, but also understanding that, like, I'm trying to help them regulate their nervous system, right? So I think the biggest thing that I see with a lot of kids, a lot of like my friends, my kids' friends, is like very dysregulated nervous systems already. And why is that? Because their parents have dysregulated nervous systems, right? And so, like, I always tell parents, I'm like, what's the biggest thing you can do for your kids? Is like, you can regulate your own nervous system first. Work on yourself first, right? If you're more optimized, if you're more regulated, then it's going to be a much better experience, because you know this. Your kids don't do what you say; they do what you do, right? And so, if you're modeling good behavior, they're going to see that, right? So, like, a good example today was, and I don't typically do this, but like my son, I was telling him, like, he's not going to be able to play video games later because we had something going on, right? On Saturdays, he typically plays, and he like threw a tantrum, and I was like, and I purposely got angry. To give him a sense, like, and I raised my voice just slightly to say, look, this is not what we're going to do, right? Like, and I gave him the whole reasons, and we talked about it, and I talked about how I wasn't angry. I was just, this is a frustration. We went through the whole thing. He's like, okay, Dad, I got it, like, but it was, I did a purposeful rise in my emotional valence to give him a sense of the seriousness of the inappropriateness of what he was doing, right? But I did that intentionally. Right. But the thing is, like, if your kid comes into your room and says something that might annoy you a little bit, then you start yelling at them, right? That has nothing to do with them.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with them. And that's the deal. And that's what I tell parents. They're like, no, it does. I'm like, no, it doesn't. You have every right. Unless they're about to injure themselves or injure you and punch you in the face or something, then you're going to protect yourself. Sure. Or scream or something. And like, when my kids were younger and I'd scream, like, when they did that, like, they're like, Dad, why'd you scream? Like, you were just about to punch me in the face, like, what do you expect? And so, like, there's certain reactions you're going to have, but the majority of these things should be more responses, right? And so if you can regulate your own nervous system, you're going to be a better parent. And that's what I tell people all the time. So
we have to set that example for our kids. Like, we can't expect our kids or people that we're coaching to do something that we're not doing ourselves.
Right.
Because if we value it and think it's that important, then obviously we should be modeling those behaviors. And what a great conversation. Dr. Scott, I am so grateful, man. I learned so much through this conversation. Thank you so much for coming here and talking with me about these things. My pleasure. I had a blast, man. This was awesome. I learned so much, and I hope the viewers, especially the college athletes, man, I would just encourage you to go and dig into these things, because there are so many supplements that we can take that are beneficial to us. I had no idea about when I was 20 years old. And it would have helped me be a better athlete, would have helped me be a better player. And so I guess before we officially wrap up, I just want to ask you one question. What is do you have like and this is kind of a fun question.
Sure.
Do you have like a favorite biohacking tool? Do you have like, because I think of like, I get on my Vibe plate, or I get my infrared sauna, or I sit in front of my red light. Do you have one that you think is just in general, just great for everyone, or maybe just one that you think is more fun than some of the others? Because us in the biohacking community, obviously we love our fun toys. So
well, I think one thing about the athletes that are listening that I'd like to say real quick is that get the basics down as much as you can. Get eating well, sleeping well, hydrating well, getting outside, getting sunlight, working on relationships. But I know it's not always easy. That's where supplements can be really helpful. The good news is that you're 20 something years old. And if you take something just a little bit, like a little bit of methylene blue, like, it's going to go a long way.
100%.
Or if you optimize and try some blue cannatine, you're going to feel the difference, and you're not going to feel the downside. There really isn't a downside, even if you're older, but even when you're younger, like, you have so much more potential. So just drive it, man. And just know that when you get the time to relax, try to down-regulate your nervous system, right? Try to find ways to calm down. Get sleep when you can. Get naps when you can. And if you need to take things to calm down a little bit, it's okay. Just don't go for the benzos. Don't go for the alcohol as much as possible, because it's going to screw you, and it's going to screw your recovery. Now, saying that, so my favorite biohacking tool is my infrared sauna. There's no question, because when I found out I was having a fourth kid, which I wasn't planning on having, I lived in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in California, 1,000 square foot.
Yeah, that was
crowded. I was like, what are we going to do with this? And I needed my own space. So I bought the most expensive thing outside of a house that I had bought at the time, which was my infrared sauna. And so it's come with me from California. and it lives with me now. And I'm getting a new one, which I'm really excited about because it's going to be a combination infrared and high heat sauna by some friends of mine at a company called Heavenly Heat, which they're great. They have like no glues and no toxins. It's like
cool.
I'm super excited about it.
Does it get hotter?
It gets hotter because it's not only infrared, it also has the Finnish style. So it's going to get to 180 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, excuse me, instead of my current infrared, which is 150. Yeah. So, but it's also going to give me the high heat, which I'm super excited about. But every night, when the kids go to bed or around that time, my oldest are now going to bed at the same time as me, basically. But I go into my infrared sauna for 20 or 30 minutes.
Yep.
I either meditate, I read, sometimes I watch Netflix. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter for me to be able to like just take it all off, calm down, sweat before I go to bed. So that's my favorite. Yeah. My most fun one, that's a good question. Like I'm doing like weird, crazy things with supplements all the time.
Yeah.
Recently I've been playing around with a little bit of like the low dose Viagra tadalafils of the world and seeing if this helps with the gym. But I find that it doesn't really work for me. So I tried, it didn't work. I just got lightheaded, but so sometimes you try things and they work, they don't work.
Yeah.
But I think my biggest one is the infrared sauna. Yeah.
Okay. Me too, man. I love my infrared sauna. Is there any bit, because I typically infrared sauna in the morning.
Yeah.
Is there any, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing it before bed or you're doing it. I like to do it to wake up. It's kind of like a morning routine thing for me.
Yeah. I found that over the years that infrared works better for me at night.
Okay.
Because it gives me like, I get like, you feel nice when you get out and take a shower. Like I think if you have cold afterwards, it would be good, like a cold shower. But for me, if I do infrared, I get tired a couple hours later typically. Okay. So I like to do it at night, but everybody's a little bit different. I'm excited for my new one because I'm going to do the high heat in the morning with a cold shower. And then I'll be like, banging. So,
okay. So if I'm doing my infrared in the morning, following it up with a cold shower is a big,
it's a nice benefit too, if you can. Okay. Yeah. It's better if you have a higher heat and then the cold, but infrared's good too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dr. Scott, this has been so fun, man. Thanks for coming in and having this conversation with me. I feel like, the athletes that listen to this are going to get a tremendous amount of benefit, and I'm excited for them to be able to learn these things at such a young age. So
yeah, check it out at Troscriptions.com. We're also on the socials at Troscriptions on Instagram, also on YouTube. We have a pretty cool YouTube channel. And then my social is at Dr. Scott Sherr, DrScottSherr. So you can check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Good to see you.
Great talking to you.
Yeah. Cheers.
I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up.